Okay. Okay. Hello. Happy Monday. Welcome to Storytime Live with Srta Pikula. I hope you're all doing really great today. I'm going to give my daily shout out. My daily shout out today is going to go to my student Reese. And the reason I'm giving shout out to Reese is because Reese has beaten me the last 6 times we've played 20 questions. He always wins. He's very good at 20 questions. And it's really amusing that he beats me every single time. So shout out to Reese for being a phenomenal player at 20 questions. Kudos to you. And we're going to recap of what happened last time in Prince Caspian. So when we were last reading in Prince Caspian, they all saw Aslan, even Trunken, who was the most notorious non-believer. And he was terrified. Oh, but then Susan also had doubted this severely, and she shunned away, backed away from Aslan. And Aslan told her to come forward, and he breathed on her and said, "Are you brave now? Do you believe now?" And she said, "I'm a little bit braver, Aslan." And then Trunken sat there, and he had never seen a lion in his life, let alone Aslan, the lion, and he was terrified of him. And even though he was perfectly safe, Aslan took him in his mouth and he shook him and he threw him in the air and he tossed him all around. And Trunken was kind of bamboozled afterwards. But Aslan did it entirely affectionately to Trunken, and he's asked him, "Son of Earth, can we now be friends?" And then they were expecting Miraz to be coming from somewhere, but anyways, Aslan directed Trunken and Edmund and Peter to go inside Aslan's house, to go inside the mound over the stone table, and to fight whatever they found there. We don't know what they found there. And in the meantime, Susan and Lucy were outside of Aslan, and the strangest thing happened. As we remember, they all of a sudden the trees all came. It looked like a crazy storm, but the trees all came and they were all dancing around Aslan, and it was a huge hoodoo. And then the strangest people came. There was the guy riding the donkey and all the girls, and they were dancing around and yelling crazy things. And what did the man on the donkey yell out to everyone? He kept yelling refreshments to everyone. And Lucy realized at the very end, she's like, the one boy, there were 2 people. There was the boy, and then there was the older man on the donkey. And she realized that the boy was Bacchus, and the older one on the donkey was Silenus. And Mr. Tumnus had told them about them, and it was quite entertaining, but they were really terrified by this whole experience at the same time, and we're grateful that Aslan was there. So let's continue to where we were. Okay. I wouldn't have felt safe with Bacchus and all his wild girls if we'd met them without Aslan. I should think not, said Lucy. Chapter 12. Sorcery and Sudden Vengeance. Meanwhile, Trunken and the 2 boys arrived at the dark little stone archway which led into the inside of the mount, and 2 sentinel badgers with white patches on their cheeks were all, and the white patches on their cheeks were all Edmund could see of them, leapt up with bared teeth and asked them in snarling voices, "Who goes there?" "Trunken," said the dwarf, bringing the High King of Narnia out of the far past. The badgers nosed at the boy's hands. "At last," they said. "Oh, at last." "Give us a light, friend," said Trunken. The badgers found a torch just inside the arch, and Peter lit it and handed it to Trunken. "The DLF had better lead," he said. "We don't know our way about this place." Trunken took the torch and went ahead into the dark tunnel. It was a cold, black, musty place with an occasional bat fluttering into the torchlight and plenty of cobwebs. The boys, who had been mostly in the open air ever since that morning at the railway station, felt as if they were going into a trap or a prison. I say, Peter, whispered Edmund, look at those carvings on the wall. Don't they look old? And yet we're older than that. When we were last here, they hadn't been made yet. Yes, said Peter. That makes one think a lot. The dwarf went on ahead and then turned on the right, and then to the left, and then down some steps, and then to the left again. Then at last they saw a light ahead, light from under a door. And now for the first time they heard voices, for they had come into the door of the central chamber. The voices inside were angry ones. Someone was talking so loudly that the approach of the boys and the dwarf had not been heard. Don't like the sound of that, said Trumpkin to Peter. Listen for a moment. All three stood perfectly still on the outside of the door. You know well enough, said a voice. You know well enough, said a voice. That's the king, whispered Trumpkin. Why the horn was not blown at sunrise this morning? Have you forgotten that Miras fell upon us almost before Trumpkin had gone, and we were fighting for our lives for the space of 3 hours or more? I blew it when first I had a breathing space. It's not likely to forget it, came the angry voice, when my dwarves bore the brunt of the attack and 1 in 5 of them fell. That's Nickabrick, whispered Trumpkin. For shame, dwarf, came a thick voice. Truffle hunter, said Trumpkin. We all did as much as the dwarves and none more than the king. Tell your tale your own way for all I care, answered Nickabrick, but whether it was that the horn was blown too late, or whether there was no magic in it, no help has come to us. You great clerk, you master magician, you know all. Are you still asking us to hang our hopes on Aslan and King Peter and all the rest of it? I must confess, I cannot deny it, that I am deeply disappointed in the results of the operation, came the answer. That'll be Dr. Cornelius, said Trumpkin. To speak plainly, said Nickabrick, your wallet's empty, your eggs addled, your fish uncaught, and your promises all broken. Stand aside and let the others work. And that is why the help will come, said Truffle Hunter. I stand by Aslan. Have patience like us beasts. The help will come. It may even now be at the door. Ha! Snarled Nickabrick. You badgers would have us wait till the skies fall until we all catch larks. I tell you, we cannot wait. Food is running short. We lose more than we can afford at every encounter. Our followers are slipping away from us. And why? Asked Truffle Hunter. I'll tell you why. Because it is noised among them that we have called on the kings of old, and the kings of old have not answered. The last words Trumpkin spoke before he went away, and went, most likely, to his death, were, if you must blow the horn, do not let the army know why you blow it, or why you hope, or what you hope from it. But that same evening, everyone seemed to know. You'd better have shoved your gray snout in a hornet's nest, badger, than suggest that I am the blab, said Nickabrick. Take it back. Or, oh, stop it, both of you, said King Caspian. I want to know what it is that Nickabrick keeps on hinting we should do. But before that, I want to know who those 2 strangers are whom he has brought into our council, and who stand there with their ears open and their mouths shut. These are friends of mine, said Nickabrick, and what better right have you to be here than that you are a friend of Trumpkin's and the Badgers? And what right has that old doctor in the black gown to be here except that he is your friend? Why, am I the only one who can't bring his friends here? His Majesty is the king to whom you have sworn allegiance, said Truffle Hunter sternly. Court manners, sneered Nickabrick. But in this hole we may talk plainly. You know And he knows that this Telmarine boy will be king of nowhere and nobody in a week, unless we can help him out of the trap in which he sits. Perhaps, said Dr. Cornelius, your new friends would like to speak for themselves. You there, who are you and what are you? Worshipful Master Doctor, came a thin, whining voice. So you please, I'm only a poor old woman, I am, and very obliged to his worshipful dwarfship for his friendship, I'm sure. His Majesty, bless his handsome face, has no need to be afraid of an old woman that's nearly doubled up with her arthritis and hasn't two sticks to put under her pedal. I have some poor little skill, not like yours, Master Doctor, of course, in small spells and cantrips, and I'll be glad to use against our enemies, if it was agreeable to all concerned, for I hate them. Oh, yes, no one hates better than I do. That is all most interesting or satisfactory, said Dr. Cornelius. I think I now know what you are, madam. Perhaps your other friend Nickabrick would give some account of himself. A dull gray voice at which Peter's flesh crept replied, I'm hunger, I'm thirst. Where I bite, I hold till I die, and even after death, they must cut out my mouthful from my enemy's body and bury me with it. I can fast 100 years and not die. I can lie 100 nights on the ice and not freeze. I can drink a river of blood and not burst. Show me your enemies. And it is in the presence of these two that you want to disclose your plan, said Caspian. Yes, said Nickabrick, and by their help that I mean to execute it. There was a minute or two during which Trumpkin and the boys could hear Caspian and his two friends speaking in low voices, but could not make out what they were saying. Then Caspian spoke aloud. Well, Nickabrick, he said, we will hear your plan. There was a pause so long that the boys began to wonder if Nickabrick were ever going to begin. When he did, it was in a lower voice, as if he himself did not much like what he was saying. All said and done, he muttered. None of us knows the truth about the ancient days of Narnia. Trumpkin believed none of the stories. I was ready to put them to trial. We tried first the horn, and then it has failed us. If there ever was a High King Peter and a Queen Susan and a King Edmund and a Queen Lucy, then either they have not heard us, or they cannot come, or they are our enemies. Or they are on their way, added Truffle Hunter. You can go on saying that Telmaris has fed us to all of his dogs. As I was saying, we have tried one link in the chain of old legends, and it has done us no good. Well, but when your sword breaks, you draw your dagger. The stories tell of other powers beside the ancient kings and queens. How if we could call them up? If you mean Aslan, said Truffle Hunter, it's all one calling him and calling on the kings. But they were his servants. But if he will not send them, but I make no doubt that he will, is he more likely to come himself? No, you're right there, said Nickabrick. Aslan and the kings go together. Either Aslan is dead, and Aslan is dead, or he is not on our side. Or else something stronger than himself keeps him back. And if he did come, how do we know that he'd be our friend? He was not always a good friend to dwarves by all that's told, not even to all the beasts. Ask the wolves. And anyway, he was in Narnia only once that I ever heard of, and he didn't stay long. You may drop Aslan out of the reckoning. I was thinking of someone else. There was no answer, and for a few minutes it was so still that Edmund could hear the wheezy and snuffling breath of the badger. Who do you mean? Said Caspian at last. I mean a power so much greater than Aslan's that it held Narnia spellbound for years and years, if the stories were true. And that's where we're going to stop for today. Thanks for listening and watching. Leave you on a cliffhanger. And we'll find out what happens and what Nickabrick is up to next time.